Shake Vader's head, Kevin. Shake it up.
You need to put more in there.
We need ideas. Send us ideas.
Send us ideas.
Send us ideas. Put them in the comments below. Twitter.
Yeah! I win!
Kevin, let's talk about the 1980s. My favorite decade.
Well, you were both born in the 80s.
Yeah, maybe you were. I was really born in the 80s. I'm older than you. I had some extra time in the 80s.
Extra time.
I spent most of my lifetime dedicated to learning about 80s culture because it
really
is
have.
one of the best, to me, one of my favorite decades to learn about because so much happened. It was like the Cold War was winding down. We had space shuttles going up there. Nintendo was kicking butt in the entertainment industry. 2 Star Wars movies came out.
Didn't credit cards come out near that time?
Probably. Cell phones. Back to the Future. I was going to say Stargate. That's not true. Indiana Jones. Harrison Ford blew up in the 80s. Every action blew up in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Almost all the Rocky movies. Dude, Sylvester Stallone. Everything.
Die Hard is 80s.
Die Hard also began in the 80s. They got 2 movies in the 80s before they left the 80s. Lethal Weapon started in the 80s. Everything awesome started in the 80s. Why do you think Hollywood is so obsessed with remaking 80s things now? It's because we're out of ideas, and that was one of the best decades. Done. We can go now, Kevin.
It was a very good decade for sci-fi as well.
Yes.
Because you had Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. You had Blade Runner. You had Aliens.
Oh, yeah, you had Aliens. Alien was 1979, so just missed the decade.
Yes. You mentioned Star Wars.
Yeah, the last 2
Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yeah.
Came out in the 80s.
TV. The Rubik's Cube. The Rubik's Cube. The greatest brain bender of all time. That has since been ruined by people who know the code. Lamos. But the point is, 80s were awesome. I really like
a lot of culture comes out of the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, so there was like rap really got its big start in the 80s. Like there was a little bit of bleed through maybe from the very end of the 70s, but rap took off in the 80s, and there was a lot of that was when rap was like hardcore rap, and there was also like the same time Rapper's Delight. I said a hip hop, a hippie to the hip. I can't sing anymore because we're gonna get fined, but that's not how the song goes. But yeah, like that, like music was awesome. Yeah, see, I always get confused though because Journey, I think they started in the 70s. I'm always careful about that stuff.
Yeah,
but Kevin, Top Gun. Top Gun was the 80s.
Top Gun really is 80s America distilled into a movie.
Kenny Loggins. He was king of the 80s. He and Michael Jackson ruled the 80s.
Danger Zone, Footloose.
That's all you needed. The theme song to Caddyshack.
Caddyshack.
He's
another movie I haven't seen.
He was there. He did like 2 songs on the Footloose soundtrack. I'm sure he did like 3 songs on the Top Gun soundtrack. He made the most iconic music besides Michael Jackson, who sang, Thriller and Beat It and all stuff. MTV started in the 80s. Yeah. That was big.
What else?
Ferris Bueller. Pretty much all the jokes that you like now that aren't internet memes probably started in the 80s. Tron was in the 80s. Deal with it. Jeff Bridges. He's not from the 80s, but he traveled through it like many people did.
We all traveled through. Well, a lot of us traveled through the.
Some
80s.
Of you actually probably didn't travel through the 80s. Now that I think about it, some of our viewership, but there are probably many viewers out there who have traveled through the 80s. Yes. Some that might have actually experienced it more than Kevin and I did. You know, the Game Boy came out actually in the 80s. It wasn't in the 90s, even though that's when I got it. It was actually the 80s.
In America or just Japan?
Well, in America, 1989.
Okay, so right at the end.
Right at the end. Tetris, Super Mario, awesome. So good. Like, everything, almost anything that you really love today probably has its roots in the 80s. I think the Apple II computer came out in the 80s.
Well, one thing that came out of the 80s that, this is going to diverge into, like, almost political stuff, but one of Reagan's acts was deregulation, and the FCC had less power. Mm-hmm. And so one of the after effects of that was that now it was legal to have TV shows that were effectively advertisements for toys. And so Transformers are basically a side effect of Reagan and of the 80s. And so it's one of those interesting things of side effects that you don't think of.
Oh man, yeah.
That happen.
Saturday morning cartoons were probably at their peak in the 80s. They started before then.
Thundercats.
But yeah, they were Thundercats, Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man. I think He-Man was in the 80s.
Yeah.
There was, definitely in the 80s because they made that Dolph Lundgren movie like a few decades after that or whatever. But yeah, Rocky. Sylvester Stallone blew up in the 80s. Bruce Willis blew up in the... Every action star that was in the Expendables essentially blew up in the 80s. Except for Terry Crews, who I'm sure he was a teenager in the 80s or something. He's pretty young. MacGyver! Oh, did I almost forget MacGyver?
You're so excited
MacGyver,
about MacGyver
is the man. I could talk forever about MacGyver. Oh my gosh. I wish we could do... I know Mythbusters already did the whole, disproving MacGyver things,
episode.
But I would love to do a MacGyver episode if we had the stuff to do it, because that would be awesome. I love the 80s. I love the show. I love the 80s. But we're going to keep talking about the 80s. For now, though, if you want to keep watching and hearing more about 80s things that you might have missed, or you might just want to reminisce about, you can click on our faces and head over to Let's Talk More. Or you can go to Kevin's left, your right, which is our previous episode of Brain Tank, which is about Thanksgiving. Give a little thanks. Give a little love to your fellow man and all that jazz.
And you can also like, subscribe, and comment below.
Do all that jazz, too. And you can buy a t-shirt over at outofspacetv.spreadshirt.com, or you can just have a nice day. But please, like and comment. What is your favorite thing of the 80s?
It helps us have a nice day.
Yes. What is your favorite thing of the 80s? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to, also, for some reason you don't have annotations on, you can click in the description below for a link to Let's Talk More about the 80s. Holla at your boy. Okay.